This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. I've got Brent Call, my brother, here. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
We're getting back into the book, Blood and Thunder, written by Hampton Sides, the epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West. We're about to get into a pretty dark moment in U.S. history, and it's got overlays of opinions, and but this kind of history work stuff is clouded by time and the fog of war and so on. But you recall in the last episode, Lugenès, the French, trapper, explorer, mountain man, who's a good friend of Kit Carson, who's part of the Fremont expedition.
Him and Carson have been together for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, and same with the the two Delaware scouts that were with them, and which were dear friends of Kit and the group as well, well respected and appreciated by the group. That's why one thing that's interesting is to claim that white people just despised Indians while they were besties with the Delaware Indians in their group.
Especially these Indians, because they're almost positive these are the ones that they were gifting knives and furs and things just earlier that day, weren't they?
You mean the Indians that attacked?
That attacked them, yeah.
Yeah. They are surmising, they think that the same Indians that attacked them that night are the Indians that they traded with earlier in the day. Now, when you look this up like on Wikipedia or in some kind of mainstream, they call this thing that we're about to read, I think they call it the Klamath Massacre or something like that. Basically, Kit Carson and Fremont, they're so angry about what happened that they want revenge before they leave. And Fremont makes a comment, which we'll get to, where he's like, look, we want to leave a mark so they never try this again.
Mm-hmm.
We want to teach these people a lesson. How dare you sneak up on us in our night, kill our friends? Now, this is a very natural reaction for human beings to have. If you killed my best friend, you want
immediately.
There's such a bitterness and anger there. And so, but if you read about it from another angle, the natives attacked them because the white people had been on a rampage attacking them first, just killing Indians randomly as they went along. It also sort of paints the Indian communities as just benevolent innocents who were invaded by colonizers and oppressed by these evil white people.
The noble savage came and dominated by the devilish white man.
Yeah, but the thing is, I hope that everyone that listens and people that especially young people, it's really disappointing how, like, I'm all here to get the truth. I'd like to know the stone cold truth. If the Europeans were evil and Carson was awful, and then if the Indians were awful, I want to know it all. Just tell me like it is. Unfortunately, there are agendas, namely Marxist, colonized type agendas out there in mainstream to try to propagate the idea that America is a terrible place, that white people are terrible, that white people invented all the bad things in the world, that white people invented slavery and so on. And with that narrative, it's difficult when you go to read something that you're trying to see as objective. Most of it, especially a Google search, it's the least objective place you can go. A book like this, where you have a best-selling author, a historian that has been around for a while, that's done other works, that has thoroughly cited the works, is a much better source, in my opinion, than Wikipedia.
Brian, but everyone can touch Wikipedia and update.
No, they can't. Just the people that Wikipedia wants to let people make an update. So the thing that's, like I was saying earlier, there's incongruencies between the narrative that they were just rampaging and killing everybody, and also there's quotes of them saying, we just traded with these Indians. Goods. So how is it that Carson's in his memoir is writing about trading with Indians, and also Wikipedia says they just went around and killed every Indian they saw and never on sight? Now, what's the sequence of events? I wouldn't be surprised if they did that.
At some point, that is the truth. At some point, they went on rampages, but it's like when that little kid runs up to you and he's crying. He's like, he hit me. Well, why did he hit you?
Right.
Like, that is an important question you got to ask yourself.
Yeah. And so I think that I wouldn't be surprised if, yes, after they go on the offensive and and avenge their friends and massacre a whole bunch of Indians, that then every Indian they see on their way home, they shoot because
they can't tell a difference.
They've just started a war, right? And so there's just so much that is left out. But when you read it, it is absolutely, if you have a couple of brain cells you can rub together, you can be like, okay, there's a lot more to these stories than what is painted. And there's awful things done on both sides. They tomahawk Lugeness in the head while he's sleeping.
They decapitated him.
I can't remember, but yeah, they were going to raid and steal. Now, if they had traded kindly earlier and feigned peacefulness, they didn't say, hey, you can't be in this territory. Later they do, but at this time they're like, yeah, you're nice to meet you people. You're strange. And the Indians did have hunting grounds, which they kind of guarded fiercely, but they also didn't believe necessarily in land ownership. So if someone comes in and they have the strength of might to be there,
they have the right.
Indians are like, unless we make them leave, it's just sort of we sort of, I think, put upon them these notions of how we see the world today, like with private property and this is my land. I was here first. This is not the Native American mindset.
Yeah, we're actually literally dragging chains out there and marking off the West.
Yeah.
Square by square. They ain't doing
selling
that.
Lots of land, and it's permanently this person's
boundary lines.
Right. Yeah, enriching the middle class and the poor, giving them a future in the form of land. With totally different worldview. And so, often they came in peacefully to different tribes. So it's just a rewrite of history, and not a very nuanced one either, because there's actually just an agenda to be sold to the public, not an actual honest discussion of what happens. Now, that said, what's about to happen, I'll read it to you, and then we can talk a little bit about what you think about it. But basically, on the morning after the Klamath attack, it was already decided that Fremont was going to go back to California.
Really?
But he wouldn't want to do this the whole time. But his scientific expedition was going to be a military one. And remember, he had met Archibald Gillespie, and he had got all the written stuff we don't really know. That's lost to history.
There's a suggestion, though. California at all cost.
Yeah.
We need to secure that western coast so America can book in the continent.
There's something going on to the point of, go back. We have a plan here.
Yeah.
So
you had a spy travel from New York pretty much around the world to Hawaii and back.
Yes.
To get there sneakily.
So before he could turn south, Fremont had another less glorious matter to attend to. He wanted to avenge the deaths of his three comrades. He felt like the Klamaths must suffer a terrible price. It was a matter of honoring Lugeness and the two fallen Delawares, but it was also the principle of the thing. No exploring party now or in the future should ever have to suffer an unprovoked attack like this again. For the moment, Fremont wrote, I threw all other considerations aside and determined to square accounts with these people before I left them. Now, that's his indignant quote. That's how he felt about it, unprovoked and so on. What I'm saying is mainstream accounts at Harvard and in college letters and in curriculum say that it was absolutely provoked. They had been on a murdering rampage before these Indians came after them, and then that's why they got attacked, which is true. I don't know for sure exactly. And digging into it, this is all cited works. These are direct quotes from their journals, right? And so I tend to be on the side that it's exactly as Fremont feels, unprovoked. We came in here, we didn't pick a fight, we didn't ask for that. We just said, hey, we're exploring. Now, definitely when strange people come into your land, you have a right to defend it for sure. But it wasn't like they came to him and said in an honorable way, hey, can't be here. This is ours. Get out or we'll make you get out. It wasn't that kind of thing. So, it's anyway, what I think is important to note is there was this anger here for what's happened, and now there's a viciousness at play to really make these people pay. And his idea is that they have a right to the land in a way. Hey, we're here exploring, and every new American settler or someone from the government who comes through here to explore better not be attacked. So there is an arrogance in Fremont in that, like, how dare you? I have a right to be here, explore it, and probably someday conquer it.
There it is.
There is that sort of, he betrays his own thoughts in how he writes this. So he definitely was. I think this is pretty much all of America at the time was, we'll work with you if you want to comply with our terms and be peaceful and work on stuff, and we'll figure things out. We'll try to share and we'll try to live together. That's sort of the approach. But when we're going to be hard negotiators, this is kind of what we want.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, we are the superior force, and you don't really have a lot to negotiate with, by the way. So you can take it or leave it. And if you decide to try to insist from your low power position on not complying,
mm-hmm.
then we'll kick your ass. And that kind of has been the way of history since the beginning of time.
I mean, that kind of attitude is what made America number one.
Well, I think that it has been, it's human. Like the idea that, what's interesting, you can go back in history. You can look at the Egyptians, same thing. You can look at
the Romans, Greeks.
You can look at other nationalities, the Muslims, Muslim nations,
the Chinese dynasties, Japan.
This is not a white thing. I want to make that clear. This is a human thing. Like, you roll in, and when the thing that's interesting too is when we are wealthy, like we are today, we can sit back and we can say, shame on them for doing such a thing.
Yep.
When you're living,
Day
crumb
to
to
day.
crumb,
Yep.
and you don't know how long you can live, and you're poverty stricken, and whoever's the strongest and has the most ingenuity lives the longest and moves forward in a very dog eat dog world. You don't have the luxury of being like noble necessarily, especially in terms of modern day thinking. So I think it's naive to look at that time and apply in your luxurious state today, in the way that you live today, apply this sort of moral framework upon the people then. They should have been so much more respectful of people who were there first. And it's like that hasn't been the case back. It can be the case now, because why should we take more when we're all so well off here? And why should that nation pick on that nation when they can just do it like we're more educated, we're more capable, we have more wealth, everyone's further along, right? And so I think it's and you would think there'd be more contentment, and I think that's how people feel. Most people feel, hey, just be happy with the land you have. Why do you got to go pick on someone else? But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Certain human beings crave power. They're evil. Certain human beings have a dark heart. Certain human beings get excited about the subjection of another person to them. And so that will always be a thing. Human beings by nature are both good and evil. And some on a spectrum are extremely evil, and some are extremely noble and good. And then there's a lot in between. And so, anyway, they're like, so he just says he threw everything to the side and decides he's going to make them pay before he leaves. So Fremont decided to make a northward clockwise circuit around the entire Klamath Lake. Didn't they say it was 30 miles? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually intersecting with the others in his expedition party who were camped on the other north shore. So they I think they went kind of around and met up or whatever. And it says, as he crept along the timbered shoreline, Fremont planned to search for Indian villages and exact retribution wherever he went. And I think that's where he writes, yeah, anybody we saw, we killed at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But Wikipedia will have it be that they did that
from the get-go. Unprovoked. Like that was the game plan heading up there.
And again, I don't have any evidence from this writing and from others that was the case. So I'm not saying that this author, Hampton Sides, didn't omit some dastardly deeds, but I don't think he did. As you dive into the book, he basically tells you the dirty deeds done, just like this one, and doesn't sugarcoat it. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of a big blight on Kit Carson's. He has this really nice record of things he accomplished, and he has like this 3 like heinous things that he did.
Ugh. And
it's like, okay, if you were trying to paint him as something else, some of this stuff I don't think would be as public as he made it, right? Like, I think he just is a historian in a sense. Journalist is what he is. So it says, Hampton Sides. So anyway, back to the book. It says, they basically went around. They were ready to kill anybody they came across. Carson had no problem with this course of action either. His outrage over the loss of his old friend Lucian S. was still keen. The Indians had commenced the war with us without cause, Carson later said. I thought they should be chastised in a summary manner.
Chastised.
He just is like perfunctory about like, well, they did this, so I killed them.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of nuance here with Kit. It's just sort of pragmatic, black and white. You do the thing, you move on. Doesn't struggle with what needed to be done. It's very, very black and white for him. That morning on May 10th, 1846, Carson and the others wrapped the bodies of Denny, Crane, and Lugeness in blankets and slung them over the pack animals. Carson wanted to bury them in some nice spot by the lake near the main camp, where they had shovels to dig a proper grave. But as the party threaded through the thick timber, the now rigid corpses kept thudding and smacking against the trunks of the trees, becoming much bruised, according to Carson. Realizing they could not in good conscience continue the ghoulish procession, the men scraped a shallow hole with their knives and solemnly buried their friends together, covered the grave with logs and brush to avoid detection. Fremont, exercising the explorer's prerogative, named the nearby brook Denny Creek, a name it still carries to this day.
Oh.
Fremont's party resumed the march north. The Delaware Indians were the first to detect Klamaths in the bush. These are the scouts that are with them, the Delawares. They took off in pursuit, and in a few moments came the reports of their long rifles. Soon the Delawares returned, bearing 2 bloody scalps. Very sick before, one of them said. Better now.
Better now.
Got a little revenge. Feeling better now. They kept moving along the shoreline. Fremont picked Carson and 10 other men to scout an area where he believed a Klamath settlement was located. Carson's group searched 10 miles ahead and soon found the hamlet. They crept up and viewed it from the cattails. It was a large fishing village named Dockwus, built near a marshy place where the Williamson River flowed into Upper Klamath Lake. The village had more than 50 lodges and bustled with life. Dogs yapped, women wove mats out of the lake reeds, fishermen glided about in their dugout canoes, fillets of salmon and suckerfish dried in the curing smoke. Suddenly the villagers became agitated, and Carson realized they'd spotted him. He called for an immediate charge, and although they were greatly outnumbered, the 11 men cantered across the shallows and raced into the now swarming village. Carson's small party fired away with impunity. Most of the Klamath men were out fishing or hunting, and those few present were armed only with bows and arrows. In a few minutes, Carson and his men had killed 21 Indians. Wikipedia says it was 14.
Really? Those are two very different numbers.
Frantically, the surviving villagers scattered for the hills, and the Delawares slaughtered many of them in their hiding places. Some of the Klamath boys swam away beneath the water, breathing through hollow reeds.
Jeez.
Snorkels.
Smart.
It was, as Carson might say, a perfect butchery by any standards. Pure and literal overkill. We gave them something to remember, he said. They were severely punished. Although Carson claimed his men did not interfere with women or children, one of his men later wrote that he found at least one old Indian woman dead in a canoe. Klamath accounts of the attack on Dockwus insist that many women and children were massacred. Which is it?
I don't know.
Yep, don't know.
I don't think you can know.
Because it's in the Dockwus' interest to say that they killed women and children, but it's also in Kit Carson's and Fremont's interest to say they didn't, in both circumstances. So you have two different groups saying one thing happened and another saying something else happened. Again, lost to time in the fog of war. Regardless, I don't think at that savage time that they were exactly careful about who they shot. But it's, I don't know a code of ethic they really carried, especially when it came to tribalism. You know, it's one thing to look at women and children in a people that you appreciate, but when you reduce a tribe to the enemy like this, it becomes dark. You know, you dehumanize a group,
making them mother,
and then it's you know, bad things happen. Carson ordered the village destroyed. I wished to do them as much damage as I could, he said. So I directed their houses to be set on fire. His men fanned out and torched the Klamath lodges, semi-subterranean hovels made of mud and logs woven together with patterned reeds that, being brittle and dry, were extremely flammable. Soon the whole village was ablaze. It was, Carson thought, a beautiful sight. He said 50 lodges.
Whoa.
Fremont saw the billowing smoke from a distance and raced to catch up. When he galloped into the burning village, the captain was sorely disappointed to have arrived too late for the sport, but he seemed immensely satisfied. Said Fremont, "It will be a story for them to hand down while there are hand down while there are any Klamaths still living on their lake.
Yeah, I'm sure they will hand that down, and I'm sure they're going to have a long memory.
Yep, true to Fremont's prediction, the massacre at Doctocquis is indeed a story handed down among the Klamaths, and it still serves as a reminder of what happened in their people's first encounter with an official party of Americans. The tribe never rebuilt what was then their largest fishing village. Today, Doctocquis is a pristine and desolate swath of reedy shoreline with no markers to indicate what happened there. According to historian David Roberts, who writes perceptively about the curious friendship between Fremont and Carson in his fine study, A New World, the tragedy at Doctocquis is deepened by the fact that most scholars now agree that Fremont and Carson, in their blind vindictiveness, probably chose the wrong tribe to lash out against. In all likelihood, the band of Indians that had killed La Jeunesse and the two Delawares were from the neighboring Modocs, another lakeland tribe centered closer to the Oregon-California border. The Klamaths were culturally related to the Modocs, but the two tribes were bitter enemies.
Oh, dang. Does Kit ever find out about that?
I doubt it. Not in their lifetime. Mm-mm.
Oh, geez.
But at this point, they weren't being all that careful. I mean, it's hard to say for sure because, there's historians out there doing their thing, but I tend to question a lot of scholars and especially PhD holders. I think you're dumber if you have a PhD on the whole, mostly. Sorry, folks. But there are those with PhDs that are intelligent, but most of them dumb. I think that what's interesting here is these Doctocquis, Kit Carson was pretty well known for understanding different tribes and recognizing their regalia and who was who and speaking various Indian languages. So I'm not sure that he was so wrong. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's possible. I mean, absolutely. In their rage, they just killed whatever Indians were around. And they could have just been like, all these Indians are the same, right?
Yeah.
Like, Klamath is Klamath. Whether it was this tribe right here, or the Modocs, a few miles down at the next lake,
they can't tell.
I don't know. And as far as the Modocs are concerned, they're like, sweet. Our old enemy got wiped out by
our new enemy.
By our new enemy, and we caused it. Right on, So it's not like the Klamaths and the Modocs didn't go at each other's throats as well, right? Later that day, one of the Klamath warriors returned to Doctocquis and, realizing his village had been destroyed, drew a bow on Carson in the deep woods. Spying him, Carson raised his gun, but it misfired.
Oops.
The Klamath was about to let his poison arrow fly when Fremont, riding a fearless gray warhorse he called Sacramento, glimpsed Carson's predicament. He wheeled Sacramento and trampled the hapless warrior, whose arrow flew awry. Sagundai, a Delaware chief, then descended on the injured Klamath and pummeled him to death with a club. Just ran him over with a horse and then beat him with a club.
Oh, lovely. That guy should have ran.
Yeah. So from that moment on, Carson felt he owed Fremont his life. In all probability, if he had not run over the Indian as he did, I would have been shot, Carson later said. I owe my life to them too. The captain and Sacramento saved me.
It's very kind of him to mention Sacramento.
The horse. Yeah, their horses, they treat, you'll see as time goes by, the horses and their mules. I mean, they really do treat them as like members of the group. Like,
what's that crazy guy from South America?
Like their horse, is like their dog, He's
the guy who had the dog named Lobo. Remember who I'm talking about from Teddy Roosevelt? Heading across the Amazon, one of the generals is in charge.
In the River of Doubt.
Yeah, the dude that was like way into his dogs, way more than his men.
The Brazilian.
Yeah. He let the Brazilian general, I can't remember what he's got an interesting name, but he let his men die all the time.
Romo? Something with an R. It's terrible. We read these books and then we forget Ramijo or anyway. But yeah, Redondo. Was that it?
If his name...
that was the bad guy that would... I don't know.
Look, if his name was Johnson or Smith or, McKenna, I could remember that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so here we are. He was saved by his horse, Sacramento, and Fremont. So can you check out what poison are these guys using?
Should I just type in Navajo poison arrows?
It's not Navajo. It's Klamath. Are you listening?
Klamath. Because it's in Klamath, Indian.
Poison arrows. I'm curious what they're using when we're in that region. Like, what is on the arrow that's poisonous?
Mm-hmm.
I know that some Indians would when they were attacking humans, they would cover it in feces and stuff.
Hemlock.
Hemlock.
Mm-hmm.
How toxic is it? How lethal is a dose?
So it looks like it was used originally by the people as a narcotic and disinfectant.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized, a lot of this will kill people. Apparently they used hemlock as a contraceptive. The women used to chew it and to keep them from getting pregnant. You're low-key poisoning yourself and the baby won't stick. Not only a contraceptive, the parsley family has been used for centuries to stifle male desire and prevent erections.
Oh, wow. Learn a lot.
Well, there you go.
That's wild.
Yeah, so they're using specifically they're talking about water hemlock, which is a type of tree. They peel they take
the bark.
Yeah, they do the same thing like they would with willow to get aspirin out.
Mm-hmm.
There's that inner bark layer. They take it out and rub it down, or they chew on it. Yeah, crazy.
As Fremont and his men
call it children's bane because kids will sometimes eat it and die.
Wow. So it says as Fremont and his men completed their long, brutal circuit around Klamath Lake, they continued to kill Indians in a desultory fashion in ones and twos, but their anger was spent. Even Fremont had reached the bottom of his revenge. I had now kept the promise I made to myself and had punished these people well for their treachery, he wrote in his memoirs. Now I turned my thought to the work which they had delayed. So that's why when I read the account of on Wikipedia, it's like they rearranged the order of it. They took phrases that were said later in the memoir, but reversed the order so it looked like all this was them just doing it from the start, from the get-go.
Unprovoked, they just showed up and like, this is ours.
But the wording doesn't make sense. If they had been rampaging and murdering Indians all the way along on their way there, then they wouldn't have they wouldn't have written in such a way of saying, hey, these guys were treacherous. They would feel like it was more justified. Now, it could have all been, you could believe that they're all just murderous people, and they were trying to hide how evil they were. And
one guy is military and stuff like that, and stuff like that could possibly look bad upon him. And, Kit's the same way.
Yeah. I just don't see, like I said, I feel like the way that, Kit basically marries a part Indian girl, and their Indians are in their group, the Delawares, they have scouts.
Denny is half Indian.
It's just like, this sort of thing where they want to pit. It's just not nuanced enough. Daniel Boone, as we read that, like the Indians in the settlers basically were completely intermingled for 100 years. Like they spoke each other's languages, and they were like, there wasn't a lot of division, and to see that overlap and acceptance and just merging of people into one people. And Boone loved the Indians, right? He got adopted by them.
Yep.
It's just so much more nuanced than what they want to make it sound, in the sense that let's divide everybody by race and all that. So
I feel like in Boone's time, it was like two small towns with like rival high schools, and they got along just fine until football season comes along. There's like certain things that just don't jive.
Even then, right? When you read about it, you realize so few Indians and whites had any
real conflicts.
Yep. It was like in this 30-year window, 7 people died in conflicts.
And it wasn't even like outright conflict. It was like almost like, that's why I'm saying like two rival high schools. Like they're doing stuff to each other, but they're not necessarily murdering each other just yet.
Yeah.
Fast forward, now we're kind of like Civil War-ish.
Yeah. So it says that Fremont headed due south now, crossing out of the realm of the Klamath and on into California. Yet as he and his expedition members dropped out of the Sierras and into Sacramento Valley, they were nearly continuously hounded by Indians of various tribes, Yahuskins, Modocs, Shastas, whose warriors were clearly riled by reports emanating from Klamath Lake. These are all like Southern Oregon, Northern California.
Yep. Klamath Falls is only about like 30 or 45 minutes away from the border, isn't it?
Yeah, Shasta, Mount Shasta, Yreka, Montague.
Mount Shasta. Yeah, I found it.
Where's Redding?
Redding.
Somewhere in there is where the Modocs were.
So Redding is down south from there. So that's it. Klamath Falls is up there.
It's gorgeous up there.
It's stupid gorgeous. Mount Shasta, Yreka, Ashland. Okay, so Grants Pass and Medford, it's east of there, straight east.
So it says Carson felt a constant hint of attack and awareness that the party was being watched. At one point, Carson suggested that they bypass a deep gorge where he rightly suspected Indians had planned an ambush. Some of those Indians followed Fremont's party, however, and Carson decided to ride into their midst and flush them out. Suddenly, one of them emerged from behind a rock. He came from his hiding place and commenced firing arrows very rapidly. Carson narrates in his autobiography, "I dismounted and fired. My shot had the desired effect." I know, dude.
That is the most eloquent way. Smoked him. Dropped the hammer. Sent it. Well, it did what I wanted.
You can see how they're like, now it's just like they're killing every Indian and every Indian's trying to kill them. Like there's a blood feud now.
Yeah, that murder right there sounded a little half-hearted to me.
Well, it's funny, like you can picture them just being hounded by a group who's just sort of hiding behind. And they're like, dude, we got to it's either kill or be killed. And he rides into it, gets him to come out from behind the rock, flushes him out. He's shooting arrows. Carson gets off, shot him.
Well, I mean, like Carson's got the right idea, because what's going to happen? They're going to be hunted. They're going to be nitpicked. Guerrilla warfare. They're not going to win that.
And the thing about Carson too is he's not opposed to violence. And here's one thing: when you think about men in the West who survived in certain lines of work, men who survived like decades, they definitely had a skill set about like killing and defense that was better than the people they went up against, right? Like being able to shoot under pressure, stay calm, not choke, not flinch. Like obviously the more he survives, the more he does it, the more deadly he becomes. But it's just like it seems to me that in this instance, you're seeing the elite level warrior in Kit Carson go up against a rookie, and it ended pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right. And Carson has superior weaponry as well. Like he's shooting a gun instead of a bow.
It gives you a little bit more poke.
It says, Carson was impressed by the warrior he had just killed and bore him no ill will. He was a brave Indian, deserved a better fate, but he had placed himself on the wrong path. It's so funny how he just says few words and that's it. Liked him. Brave guy, deserved better, but had to kill him. Done. Like there's no, can you elaborate on that? No.
But the thing is, Bri, is because he's a man of so few words, I think he really means it when he says it.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there was a lot of like, in this moment, in this instance, I feel like that there's animosity has left him.
Yeah, there's a genuine appreciation. Felt bad for the Indian a little bit. Thought he deserved better. He was a brave guy. Respected him. I mean, this is a man saying, I respected this person. Didn't want to have to kill him, but had to because it was me or him.
When you are in a field and you see one of your competitors, even if they do something that's better than you or kicks your butt, it's hard not to see the majesty or the sweet strokes that they did to do it and not appreciate it.
Yeah, I do appreciate this, though. It says a brave Indian deserved better, but he had placed himself on the wrong path. Kit Carson didn't say it was my fault. He said it's his fault. He chose to, it's just sort of don't dish out what you can't take. Carson collected the warrior's fine bow and beautiful quiver of arrows and presented them as a souvenir to Lieutenant Gillespie. More accustomed to sea travails, Gillespie was exhausted by this nerve-wracking existence and was dazzled by trail-savvy men like Carson, who seemed to have the stomach and aptitude for it. By heaven, this is rough work, he exclaimed to Fremont. I'll take care to let them know about it in Washington. If Fremont's mind was elsewhere, he replied, it will be long enough before we see Washington again. So that's the story. Okay. I think the nickname for this in some textbooks is the Klamath Massacre. They never do go back. They wipe those out. And as you could see, even their enemies, the Modocs, the Shastas, Yahuskins, like these other tribes went on the little chase there to get revenge after. It's like, it kind of reminds me of this. Like, you can't kill those people. They're my relatives. Only I can kill them.
Yeah.
How dare you
You can't beat up my brother. That's my brother. Only I can beat up my brother.
Yeah. It's one of those things. So.
Totally.
Anyway, that's a little dark. And Carson called it a perfect butchery. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, folks. Hope you're getting something out of this.
Hope you enjoy
this story, this history. I really want to lay it out. It's I think it's fascinating, and more people should know. More of us should.
I love history, and I wish I had more of it. And I wish I would have got more of it in school. We talked earlier, Bri, I was thinking in the only time that I had any kind of education about like U.S. presidents and stuff was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
That was it. All of my knowledge that I had until probably in my 20s about the U.S. presidents came from 5th grade.
Looking back, I can say I was extremely fortunate, like blessed, because I had every year I can look back from 7th grade till I graduated high school. I had some phenomenal history teachers. They were remarkable. They were special. And from World War II to, and they tried to present it as unbiased as possible, as nuanced as possible. And I think it was a great blessing for me because I had a natural inclination to read myself. And then I did read. And I've read books with completely opposing viewpoints from a historian. And I think the truth lies somewhere in between.
You know what's crazy, Bri? We grew up in the same place, same school district, different experience. And you know, you're only 15 years older than me.
Yeah, but the stretch of time between when you were in school and I was in school is greater than that. Like, let's say I graduated.
That's true.
I graduated in 1993.
2006.
You're talking late 80s, 90s is when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
The world wasn't filled with so much propaganda at the time. I mean, it had it.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of sort of this new age Marxist agenda, this woke kind of thing, it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you came along, you would have graduated
2006.
2006.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of things changed. Still, that's not a bad time. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it. I mean, today they're saying, you know, they're teaching complete nonsense.
My best friend has a son who's under 10 years old, and his school, they're in Iowa. Okay,
I mean, a fundamental reality.
The kids have to have iPads.
That fundamental reality is that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and there are massive biological and mental, social differences between the two sexes. That's why we have women have their own sports, because when it was if it's just unisex, no women could play.
And when they are unisex, Brian, they have different rules for the guys and the girls.
Look, it's nonsense. They just are teaching such intellectualized. I'm so smart. I'm so they're so intellectual. They've intellectualized themselves into stupidity. I went to Portland State University about the time you were toward the end of your high school, and I was there, and I took women's studies because I had to. I took Native American history. I took women's rights. Like, there was like 7 electives I had to choose from as I got enrolled pretty late, and they were all just. And it was me against a classroom full of pink-haired freaks. And I literally was a battle every week in class as I would write these papers and read these books. There were things that I learned that were great, but there was just a lot of indoctrination, a lot of lying being pushed. And it's still that way right now in the schools. So when we moved 3 years ago, I pulled my kids out of public school and started homeschooling them. It was the best decision that we ever made.
Can I just tell you, I like your kids so much more now.
Oh yeah.
They're you could hang out with them.
They're cool.
They're cool.
They were indoctrinated. They were going down a really dark path. They were unhappy. They were sad. They were confused.
And this is Fruit Heights, Utah.
Yep.
You're not in California. You're not in Portland.
It's Davis County. Yeah. I mean, but I'm sure there was carryover from their Portland schools and their Colorado schools, and then but removing the indoctrination flow, cutting off their psycho friends, taking away their iPads, iPhones, and everything else, and taking them out of school, and then teaching them history as it really happened, best to our knowledge, finding as many books that are as fair and balanced as we can, and bringing those to bear and having those discussions and having a really deep conversation about other countries, their laws, what they're like, reading about them, firsthand accounts. My kids they're empowered because they understand history, and their friends don't. Their friends don't have a clue. Their friends' idea of history is completely, it's a lie. And so they're a bit lost, and they believe it's easy to get them to believe certain things because they don't actually know the truth about the past. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do a podcast like this, and as many episodes as I can, as often as I can, is to try to bring something out there. I know some people will like it and listen to it, and others are like, why are you doing that? That's stupid. I'll never listen. But I'm hoping that just the few that do, that you make a lifetime difference. You change their life. You open their eyes to something that they had no idea about, and you change their life. I know that there are things I learned about history that have completely changed that changed my life and empowered me for the future. So yeah, human beings, we are meant to tell stories, to live by stories. Like the brain, I think we rely on stories. How easy is it for you to stand in front of a group of people and then tell people, a 10-minute story about something? You don't have to write it down. You don't have to research it. You don't have to, it's just a story that you know, and it just, the story. Then, do the same thing, a 10-minute speech on, I don't know, something that has no story in it. It's just it's more like a subject of fact. And it's really hard. You got to have notes. You got to have a structure, an outline, and all these kinds of things. That's why stories, I think, are powerful. They, in one moment too, when you recall the story, Little Red Riding Hood, when you recall, Chicken Little and the sky is falling, and Never Cry Wolf. And this is why, when you hear these types of stories, don't lie, because sometime when you are telling the truth, no one will believe you. And then what? Those are stories that you hear and they are impactful and you remember. And what's being what a lot of what's happening today is there's a subversion of those traditions and those stories, trying to be replaced with progressive ideas that aren't actual archetypal storylines, and so they don't resonate. And we instinctively, in our DNA, know that it's not true. And it's very difficult to create good art and, good content that people enjoy, because it's not inspiring. It's based on falsehoods and narratives. And I think that's why some of our culture is sick today, and why the entertainment is so useless and the comedy is so unfunny, So anyway, that's just a little, we are going to get out of your hair today. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the show. We really appreciate all your support. We'll catch you on the next one. All right, folks, I hope you're enjoying the Dueling Pistols podcast. If you like it, do us a favor and share it with a friend. Help us get this thing to grow a little bit bigger. Tell your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy, your uncle.
Go to
your grandpa.
Hit select all, send.
Just sell it. Just share it with a friend of yours, somebody, and help us spread the word about the show. Thanks for supporting us. We'll catch you on the next episode.